Welcome to the STEM Confidence Podcast, where we talk about how to turn your data into powerful insights. Hello and welcome to another episode of the STEM Confidence Podcast. Today, we are diving into a topic that has been a recurring theme in the recent chats that I had with my clients. So I decided it's time to talk about it here as well. Today, we are going to talk about ways in which we are sabotaging the writing process and sort of killing the very famous writing flow. We are going to talk about the top 3 writing mistakes that I see in the work with my clients. And as we roll into November and December, I feel it's writing season for many of us. Reports, papers, summaries, proposals, you name it. It feels like they are all on the to-do list. The pressure is on to close out the year with impactful documents about the work we did, and that often means writing up a storm. So, without further ado, let's get real about the top 3 writing mistakes that tend to trip us up. So, mistake number 1 is one that I see quite often, which is writing without a plan. People often tell me that they do not have a writing plan because they want to follow the waves of inspiration, or even better, wait until they will feel motivated about writing. But from my experience, this is a recipe for disaster. It is actually very difficult to follow through without a plan, and there is no such thing as flow. Writing is a task that should be taken seriously, and the famous flow comes from writing and actually doing the work, and very rarely just by pure motivation. In other words, you have to plan your writing in order to get into the flow, and not just flow to get your writing done. Okay, now that we identified the mistake, how do we correct it? How do we make a plan and actually follow through? What is even a good writing plan? So, first of all, a good writing plan is one that is realistic and achievable. It is often useful to know when are you most likely to write. Do you prefer writing at the end of the workday, or do you prefer to write first thing in the morning? Once you've identified your ideal timeline, try to separate your entire task into smaller pieces. For example, if you have to write an entire project report, it is a good idea to separate it into sections or even paragraphs. After that, what I like to do is to enumerate each section by difficulty. Because when you identify the difficulty of each section, you can choose which one you want to write in each writing session. This is very important because you are probably not going to be equally motivated to write each time you see on your calendar that it's writing time. By knowing which sections you find easier and which sections you find harder to write, you can tailor your writing session to the energy level you are feeling that day. And this actually brings me to the second mistake. Mistake number 2 is to edit while writing. Do not do that, please, ever. Believe me, this is just not what you need. And this is not your brain speaking, this is not your logic speaking, this is just your inner perfectionism speaking. And feel free to ignore it. While writing, it is crucial to let your ideas flow without the constraint of perfectionism. What I actually like to encourage my clients to do is to schedule different time slots for writing and for editing. When you do that, you allow each task to have the undivided attention it deserves. Also, this separation prevents the exhaustion that often results from simultaneously trying to generate ideas and polish them to perfection. Editing can be a very tiring job, and it demands a more selective and refined eye. Ideally, you should leave a gap of at least few hours or even days between the writing and editing. Believe me that leaving a gap between writing and editing sessions can be incredibly beneficial. This distance minimizes bias and allows you to identify mistakes and areas for improvement that you might have missed in the heat of writing creation. So, to sum up, write first, edit later. Do not do those two things at the same time. And finally, the number 3 mistake that I most often see is doing all the above but not actually starting to write. We have a tendency to engage in planning, self-editing, and overthinking, all without actually initiating the writing process. So if you have a plan, actually starting to write is the only way to get going. And if you find yourself spinning around trying to write and then not doing it, try to commit to writing for really small amounts of time. Start with 10 minutes, and during this time, let your mind guide you in the direction of the first bullet point in your plan. So let's see how this would look like in an example. Let's say that in your writing plan, you say that you are first going to write about the main outcomes of your analysis. Set a timer for 10 minutes and do a thought download about everything your brain wants to say about that point. I have been talking about thought downloading here in the podcast several times so far, but in the case you are not familiar with the concept, don't worry because it is very simple. Thought downloading basically consists of setting a timer and letting go on paper all the thoughts you have about the topic without overthinking, without caring about grammar or sentence structure. You just want to let the words come out. In these 10 minutes, let your mind pour out all the insights and ideas related to the main outcome of your analysis. This free-flowing exercise allows you to harness your innate creativity and overcome the paralysis of overthinking. Finally, as you can see, addressing these 3 common writing challenges requires a combination of effective planning, task segregation, and decisive action. Together, they pave the way to a more productive and satisfying writing experience. In essence, the act of writing is a journey, one that we embark upon with intent, with discipline, and most importantly, with clarity. And whether you are an experienced writer or you are just beginning your writing adventure, understanding and conquering these obstacles will significantly enhance your writing skills. Thank you for listening, and until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you are ready to elevate your communication skills and transform your data into valuable insights, schedule a free discovery call on the link in the description.